"Don't hit me, I'm already hurt," sobbed the young girl. The silent cowboy changed everything. Maya lived in a small, quiet town where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. The streets were dusty, and the houses were close together, but behind the walls of her own home, Maya often felt alone. Her father was a strict man, always busy with work and rarely showing any warmth. Her mother had left when Maya was very young, and her absence left a hole in Maya's heart that no one else seemed able to fill. She often wondered why some people had families that laughed and hugged, while she only had silence and strict rules. School was no different. The other children didn't understand her, and sometimes they didn't even try. They would whisper when she walked by or laugh quietly, as if hoping she wouldn't notice. It made her stomach hurt, a deep, twisting ache that she could never quite shake. She would sit quietly in the back of the classroom, keeping her head down and hoping that if she stayed small enough, no one would see her pain. But sometimes, staying small wasn't enough. There were days when the teasing became louder, sharper, and the words cut deeper than she could bear. She remembered one particular afternoon when a group of girls cornered her near the playground. Their words were cruel, sharp as knives, and they laughed at every flinch she made. Maya's chest felt tight, and her hands trembled. "Don't hit me, I'm already hurt," she whispered, though no one was touching her yet. The words escaped her lips like a prayer, a desperate hope that if she spoke them, maybe the pain could be stopped before it started. Maya had learned early in life that sometimes people hurt others, not because they wanted to, but because they were hurting themselves. She watched her classmates, her father, even the neighbors, and she began to see patterns. Pain often breeds pain, and yet it never made it any easier for the one who was suffering. This understanding made her cautious. She learned to hide her tears behind a forced smile, to cover her trembling hands with the sleeves of her sweater, and to speak only when necessary. Despite her loneliness, Maya had a rich inner world. She would spend hours imagining faraway places, forests where no one could find her, rivers that sang lullabies, and mountains that seemed to touch the clouds. She wrote in a small notebook she kept hidden under her bed, filling the pages with stories of adventure, hope, and sometimes sadness. Her imagination became her refuge, a place where she could be brave, loved, and safe, things she rarely experienced in the real world. Yet even her imagination could not shield her from the reality outside. Each morning she would wake up to her father's sharp voice calling her to get ready for school. He never asked how she felt or what she dreamed about the night before. Breakfast was quick, often a hurried bowl of cereal, and then it was off to school. Maya learned to move quickly, to avoid conversation, and to make herself as invisible as possible. The small town itself had a quiet rhythm. People walked slowly, waving at neighbors, tending to their gardens, and sharing news in hushed tones. But Maya never felt a part of it. She watched the children play in the streets, their laughter echoing off the walls, and a sharp pang of envy twisted inside her. She wanted to join them, to feel included, but fear always held her back. Fear of being rejected, fear of being hurt, fear that even if she tried, she would only be pushed away. Her father's house was an extension of that fear. He believed that showing emotions was a weakness, that crying or pleading for understanding would never change anything. Maya had tried once, long ago, to ask for comfort after a particularly bad day at school. She had spilled her heart in quiet words, hoping for a hug, a kind word, or even just acknowledgement. But her father had only sighed and told her to stop being so sensitive and toughen up. After that, Maya stopped asking. She learned to carry her pain silently, to swallow her tears, and to speak only when absolutely necessary. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Maya sat on the worn wooden steps outside her house. She held her knees close to her chest and let the cool evening breeze brush against her face. She felt the emptiness around her like a heavy blanket. The distant sound of a horse's hooves clopping softly against the dirt road caught her attention. She looked up, curious, but saw nothing. The town was quiet, and no one else seemed to notice. It was during these quiet moments that she first became aware of the silent cowboy. He was a man who seemed to belong to the wind and the open spaces rather than the town. He never spoke much. In fact, Maya had never heard him say a single word. Yet, he moved through the town like a shadow, observing, watching, but never intruding. Some people whispered about him, wondering who he was and why he came and went without notice. But to Maya, he felt different. There was something about his calm presence, the way he seemed to notice the smallest details, that made her feel safer, even though he was a stranger. Over time, Maya began to see him more often. Sometimes he would appear at the edge of the playground during recess, leaning against a fence, silent and still. Other times she would catch glimpses of him walking past her house in the evenings, his hat pulled low and his eyes scanning the street. She couldn't explain why, but knowing he was there gave her a strange comfort. It was as if someone understood, someone was watching over her, even if he never spoke a single word. Maya's days continued in this cycle of quiet struggle and small escapes into her imagination. She wrote her stories, she walked alone by the river, and she watched the world from a distance. Each day felt heavy, but each evening brought a tiny spark of hope, a spark that grew whenever the silent cowboy appeared. He became a symbol of something she had never known: protection without expectation, presence without judgment, and strength without violence. One particularly hard day, when the teasing at school had been worse than usual, Maya ran to the small hill behind her house to be alone. Tears streamed down her face, and her chest felt like it would burst. She whispered to herself, "Don't hit me. I'm already hurt," her voice shaking but firm. She repeated it like a mantra, a way to protect herself from the invisible pain the world seemed to carry. As she sat there, trying to calm herself, she felt a quiet presence behind her. Slowly, she turned her head and saw him, the silent cowboy, standing just a few feet away, watching her with gentle eyes. For the first time, Maya didn't feel the urge to run or hide. There was no threat in his presence, only a steady calm that made her feel like it was okay to cry, okay to be scared, and okay to be herself. She didn't know why he was there, and she didn't ask. She simply let herself feel the pain she had been holding inside for so long, and for the first time, it didn't feel quite so heavy. That night, as she returned home, Maya felt something shift inside her. The world was still difficult, and her life still full of challenges, but the spark of hope had grown a little brighter. She realized that sometimes help comes not in loud words or dramatic gestures, but in quiet presence, in someone who simply stands by your side when you need it most. And in that moment, Maya understood that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine, all because of the silent cowboy who had quietly appeared in her world. Maya woke up the next morning with a strange mix of fear and curiosity in her heart. The quiet presence of the silent cowboy from the evening before lingered in her mind. She didn't understand why a stranger would care or even notice her, but somehow it felt comforting. She dressed quickly, eating her breakfast in silence, her thoughts constantly drifting to him. The walk to school was long and quiet. The streets were the same as always, dusty and sun-baked, lined with small houses, fences, and gardens that smelled faintly of flowers and earth. Children ran past laughing and shouting, chasing each other with carefree energy that Maya could only watch from a distance. She kept her eyes lowered, as usual, hoping not to attract attention. But today felt different. A small courage had sparked inside her, one that had not been there before. As she approached the schoolyard, she saw the usual crowd of children waiting. Some teasing, some playing. Her stomach tightened at the thought of another difficult day. Then she noticed him again, the silent cowboy, leaning against the edge of the playground fence, as if he had come just to watch over her. His hat shadowed his face, but his eyes seemed calm, almost kind. Maya's heartbeat quickened. She didn't know why, but seeing him there made her feel a little braver. It wasn't long before the first challenge of the day arrived. A boy from her class, tall and confident, stepped in her path. He had teased her before, and she knew what was coming. "Hey, little miss," he sneered. "Don't look so scared. Are you going to cry today too?" Maya's throat went dry. She wanted to shrink away, to disappear into herself, but something inside her whispered, "You're not alone today." She glanced toward the fence and saw the cowboy standing silently, his posture calm, unmoving, but somehow powerful. That tiny bit of support was enough to steady her. She took a shaky breath and tried to speak, but the words barely came out. "Leave me alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. The boy laughed, clearly thinking he had won. He reached toward her, but before he could get too close, a sharp voice cut through the air. Not loud, not angry, but firm, steady, and impossible to ignore. "Step back." The boy froze. He looked around, confused, and then his eyes fell on the silent cowboy. The man's presence was commanding but calm. There was no shouting, no threat, yet the boy felt an invisible weight in the air, a certainty that this man would not allow harm to continue. Without saying a word, the cowboy walked a few steps closer. He didn't touch Maya, didn't shout, didn't threaten. He simply stood there, silent, but strong. Something shifted in the boy's attitude. His confidence faltered. He took a step back, muttering something under his breath, and then finally walked away, leaving Maya trembling but unharmed. Maya couldn't believe what had just happened. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words got stuck in her throat. The cowboy simply nodded once, a small, almost invisible gesture, and then leaned back against the fence, watching the playground as if nothing extraordinary had occurred.
Yet, to Maya, everything had changed.
The rest of the day at school was quiet, surprisingly so. The other children seemed to notice a difference in her as well. There was a new sense of confidence, however small, that radiated from her. She walked a little taller, spoke a little clearer, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely invisible. During lunch, Maya sat under a tree, opening her notebook and trying to write, but her hand shook with excitement. She scribbled down everything she could remember about the cowboy, about how he had stood silently but powerfully, about how safe she had felt for the first time. Her imagination, which had always been her escape, now began to mingle with reality. Perhaps he was not just a stranger. Perhaps he was someone who understood her, someone who could teach her a new way to see the world. After school, Maya followed her usual path home, careful to stay on quiet streets. She noticed the cowboy again, walking at a distance, his hat tilted low, his figure calm and composed. She felt a strange urge to speak to him, but fear held her back. What if he didn't want to talk? What if she disturbed his peace? Yet, the pull was strong, a gentle force she could not ignore. Over the next few days, this pattern continued. The cowboy appeared quietly, always observing, always present but never intrusive. He never spoke, never asked questions, but his actions were clear. He watched over Maya, ensured she was safe, and sometimes simply walked alongside her for a short distance before disappearing. Maya began to notice subtle details about him. His hat was wide-brimmed, shadowing his face. His clothes were simple but clean, and his boots made a soft, steady sound on the dusty ground. There was a calmness in his movements, a patience that seemed endless. She wondered who he was, why he had come to this town, and why he cared about her. But most of all, she wondered how someone could make such a difference without saying a single word. One evening, after a particularly hard day at home, Maya ran to her secret hill behind the house, the same place she had gone before. Tears streamed down her face, and her chest ached with the weight of her loneliness. She whispered again, "Don't hit me. I'm already hurt," the words shaking in the evening air. She felt small, fragile, and lost, wishing desperately for someone to understand. Then she saw him. The cowboy was there again, standing a few feet away, calm and silent. He didn't rush to her, didn't speak, didn't demand anything from her. He simply watched, a steady presence in the growing twilight. Maya's tears continued, but now they were different. They were tears of release, of recognition, of something she hadn't known she was missing. She felt the first stirrings of hope. The days turned into weeks, and Maya began to change. She still faced challenges, still experienced loneliness, but the quiet strength of the cowboy inspired her. She started to speak up, small steps at first, in school, at home, and even with neighbors. She discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to keep going even when fear was present. Maya's notebook became fuller with each passing day. She wrote about the cowboy, about her fears, about her dreams, and about small victories. Writing became more than an escape. It became a way to process her experiences, to understand the subtle lessons the silent cowboy was teaching her without words. One afternoon, while walking home, Maya noticed the cowboy helping a neighbor repair a fence. He worked quietly, methodically, never drawing attention to himself, but his skill and patience were clear. Maya realized that this was the same way he had helped her, not by solving all her problems, not by speaking grand words, but by being steady, reliable, and present. His actions, simple and silent, carried more meaning than words ever could. Maya began to mirror some of his behaviors. She learned to pause before reacting, to observe situations calmly, and to approach challenges with quiet determination. She still faced bullying, still faced moments of fear, but she was no longer entirely helpless. She had learned slowly that protection and strength did not always come from aggression or loudness. Sometimes they came from silence, patience, and a steady heart. The silent cowboy never revealed his name, and Maya never asked. She didn't need to. He had become a symbol in her life, a guardian whose lessons transcended words. And though she didn't understand everything about him, she trusted him, not because of what he said, but because of what he did. By the end of that part of her journey, Maya had grown in ways she hadn't imagined possible. She still carried scars, both visible and invisible, but she had discovered resilience, hope, and the power of quiet support. The silent cowboy had changed her world, not through dramatic gestures, but through steady presence, calm authority, and unwavering kindness. And in doing so, he had planted a seed of courage that would grow stronger with each passing day. Maya looked out over the fields beyond her town, the horizon glowing with the promise of a new day. She felt a quiet determination inside her, a feeling that she could face what came next. She wasn't alone, and perhaps for the first time she believed that even in a world filled with challenges, there were people who could help, guide, and protect without needing to speak a word. Maya's life began to change slowly, quietly, like the morning sun rising over the horizon. She still faced challenges, but with each day she felt a little braver. She noticed that she could face small fears without panicking, and the presence of the silent cowboy gave her strength she didn't know she had. She didn't fully understand him, but she trusted him in a way that felt natural, as if he had always been a part of her life. One afternoon, as Maya walked home from school, she saw a group of younger children struggling to lift a heavy box near the edge of the town square. Most adults were busy with their own tasks and didn't notice, but Maya paused. Her first instinct was to keep walking. She had always been taught to stay out of trouble, to avoid risks, but something in her reminded her of the silent cowboy, how he acted without seeking attention, helping others quietly, patiently. Maya stepped closer and said softly, "Do you want me to help?" The children looked at her with surprise, and then one of them nodded. Together, they lifted the box carefully and placed it where it belonged. It wasn't easy, and Maya's arms ached, but she felt a new kind of satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing. Later, as she walked down the street, she noticed the cowboy standing a little way behind her, watching. He didn't say a word, didn't gesture, but the quiet way he nodded at her made her chest swell with pride. It was as if he was silently telling her, "You did well." Maya began to notice more about the people around her. She started paying attention to small details, a neighbor struggling to carry groceries, a child crying over a fallen toy, an elderly man needing help to cross the street. She didn't feel obligated to help everyone, but she realized that little acts of kindness mattered more than she had ever thought. And each time she acted, she remembered how the silent cowboy had taught her these lessons without ever speaking. At school, Maya's confidence began to grow. She started raising her hand in class, even when she wasn't completely sure of the answer. She still felt nervous, but she noticed that mistakes didn't hurt as much as they used to. She was learning that failing or being afraid didn't make her weak, it made her human. And just as importantly, she learned that having someone silently believing in her, even from a distance, could change how she saw herself. One morning during art class, Maya decided to draw the cowboy. She sketched him as she remembered him. Tall, calm, his wide hat casting a shadow over his face. She drew him standing quietly, watching over her like a guardian angel. When she finished, she looked at the drawing and felt warmth in her chest. The image was more than a picture. It was a reminder that courage could come from quiet strength, and that even one person could make a huge difference in someone else's life. Life at home remained difficult, though. Her father still struggled to show affection or understanding, and sometimes his words were harsh. But Maya began to face these moments differently. Instead of retreating into herself completely, she started speaking in small ways. "I need a minute," she might say before retreating to her room. Or, when he raised his voice, she learned to remain calm and breathe deeply, thinking of the quiet strength of the cowboy. She was learning that control didn't mean confrontation, and patience didn't mean weakness. One evening the cowboy appeared again at the hill where Maya often went to be alone. She had begun to understand that this place was a bridge between her world and his, a quiet space where she could process her feelings. She approached him cautiously, as always, but this time she felt a small courage rising within her. "Why do you watch me?" she asked quietly, unsure if he would even respond. Maya understood that he wasn't going to answer in words. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small, smooth stone. It was ordinary, but she could feel its weight, the way it fit perfectly in her hand. She looked up at him, confused, and he simply nodded and walked a few steps away, leaning against a tree as he always did. Maya held the stone tightly and felt a warmth spread through her. The gift wasn't about the stone itself. It was about the gesture, the message. The silent cowboy was showing her that sometimes support came in unexpected forms, and that small symbols could carry great meaning. She began keeping the stone in her notebook, a reminder of patience, presence, and quiet courage. Days passed, and Maya faced her first real test of bravery. One afternoon, as she walked home from school, she noticed a younger boy being bullied by two older children. Memories of her own fear and helplessness surged inside her, but she remembered the cowboy's presence, his calm strength, and the lessons she had learned about helping others. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward and said firmly, "Leave him alone." The bullies laughed at her at first, thinking she would run away, but Maya stood her ground, remembering the silent strength of the cowboy. She didn't shout or threaten. She simply remained calm, her eyes steady and her voice clear. Slowly, the bullies backed off, muttering angrily, and left the boy unharmed. The boy looked at her with wide eyes, grateful and amazed. Maya smiled softly and said, "It's okay now. You're safe." Inside, she felt a surge of pride and confidence. She realized that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear, standing for what was right even when the world seemed against you. That evening, Maya sat on her secret hill, the stone in her hand, reflecting on the day's events. She understood that the silent cowboy had not just protected her. He had taught her to protect herself and others, to act with courage, kindness, and quiet strength. She felt a new sense of responsibility, a desire to be brave not just for herself but for those who couldn't be. Maya's notebook became her confidant. She wrote about the lessons she had learned, about courage, patience, and kindness. She wrote about the silent cowboy, about the moments that had changed her life, and about her hopes for the future. Writing was no longer just an escape. It was a tool for understanding, growth, and reflection. The town began to notice small changes in Maya. She smiled more often, helped others without being asked, and faced challenges with calm determination. Teachers and neighbors whispered about how she had grown, how her eyes now carried a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. Maya knew the truth. It wasn't just her own strength that had grown, but the influence of the silent cowboy, whose quiet lessons had become a part of her being. One day, while walking through the town square, she saw the cowboy helping repair the roof of the small library. He worked silently, carefully, and skillfully, just as he always had with her. Maya approached and offered to help. Together, they lifted boards and hammered nails side by side without words. The work was hard, but Maya felt joy and pride. She realized that strength was not only about courage but also about service, helping others, working together, and being patient. When the work was done, the cowboy simply nodded at her, the faintest smile visible beneath his shadowed hat. Maya understood. She didn't need words. She could feel the lesson in her heart. Helping others was a quiet power, one that could change the world little by little. That night, Maya lay in bed thinking of everything she had learned so far. Fear still existed, but it no longer controlled her. She had learned patience, courage, and the quiet strength that comes from presence and action, rather than words. And she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she had the tools to face them. Tools given to her not through speeches or lectures, but through the calm guidance of someone who had quietly changed her life. The silent cowboy had become more than a mysterious figure. He had become a teacher, a guide, and a symbol of hope. Maya understood that life would continue to bring hardships, but she had learned to meet them with courage, kindness, and patience. And for the first time in her young life, she believed in the possibility of change, growth, and a better future. Maya had grown in ways she could not have imagined just a few months ago. She walked through her town with a quiet confidence, her head held a little higher, her steps a little steadier. The silent cowboy had taught her lessons that went beyond words: courage, patience, kindness, and the quiet power of presence. Yet life, as it always does, was about to test her in a way she had never faced before. One late afternoon, as she walked home from school along the familiar dusty streets, she noticed a commotion near the edge of town. A group of older children had cornered a younger boy, much like she had once been cornered herself. Their faces were mean, their words sharp, and their actions threatening. Maya felt her chest tighten. The boy looked terrified, and she recognized the same helpless feeling that had haunted her for years. Her first instinct was fear. She remembered the nights she had spent crying alone, wishing someone would protect her, wishing someone would step in. For a moment, she considered running, hiding, letting someone else deal with it. But then she felt the weight of the silent cowboy's lessons. She remembered the moments he had been there for her, not with words or loud gestures, but with quiet, steady presence.
Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear. It was action in spite of it.
Maya stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Leave him alone." The older children laughed, mocking her small size, her young age. "And what are you going to do about it?" one sneered. "Run home and cry like the little girl you are?" Maya's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of everything she had learned: patience, presence, and calm strength. She didn't shout. She didn't throw insults. She simply held her ground and looked them in the eye. There was a firmness in her stance, a quiet determination that was impossible to ignore. As the tension grew, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the scene. The silent cowboy had arrived, moving calmly, but with purpose. He didn't rush or shout. He simply stood there, observing, his presence alone shifting the energy in the air. The older children hesitated, feeling the invisible weight of his calm authority. They had no idea who he was, but they could sense that he would not allow harm to continue. Maya realized something important in that moment. She didn't need the cowboy to fight for her or for the boy. She needed him as a reminder of courage and presence. She was learning to be brave, not because someone else was protecting her, but because she had the strength to act. One of the older children lunged at the boy, but Maya stepped between them. "Stop," she said again, her voice stronger this time. She felt the cowboy's eyes on her, steady and reassuring, and it gave her the confidence to stand even taller. "It's not right to hurt someone smaller than you." The boy looked up at her wide-eyed, as if seeing a guardian angel. Maya's calm courage seemed to spread to him, giving him hope and strength. He slowly began to step back, moving out of harm's way, his fear replaced by a sense of safety. The older children, sensing the combined presence of Maya's determination and the cowboy's quiet authority, finally relented. They muttered angrily, pushed each other, and left, leaving the boy unharmed. Maya exhaled slowly, her body shaking with adrenaline, relief, and a small but powerful sense of pride. She had faced her first true test of bravery, and she had succeeded without violence or anger. After the scene had cleared, Maya knelt beside the boy. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. He nodded, his eyes still wide. I think so," he said softly. "Thank you." Maya smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest.
It's okay. You're safe now.
The cowboy approached quietly, his usual calm presence enveloping the space around them. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. Maya felt his approval in the way he watched her, the slight nod he gave her, and the quiet confidence in his posture. She realized that this moment wasn't just about helping the boy. It was about recognizing her own strength and understanding that she could stand up for what was right, even when it was scary. That evening, Maya returned to her secret hill, the place where she had spent countless hours thinking, imagining, and learning from the silent cowboy. She held the small stone he had given her, feeling its smooth weight in her hand. It had been a symbol of courage, patience, and quiet strength, and now it seemed more meaningful than ever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep oranges and pinks, Maya thought about everything that had happened. She remembered the fear she had felt, the panic rising in her chest, and the doubt that had whispered in her mind. And yet she also remembered the lesson she had learned, to be calm, to act with patience, to face challenges with quiet courage. She realized that bravery wasn't about fighting or being fearless. It was about standing up, taking action, and protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Over the next few days, Maya noticed changes in herself that she hadn't expected. She walked with a stronger sense of confidence, not arrogance, but quiet self-assurance. She spoke more clearly, helped more willingly, and faced challenges with a calm determination. The silent cowboy remained a constant presence, sometimes visible, sometimes just a shadow in the distance, always reminding her that courage and kindness could coexist. One morning she overheard her father talking to a neighbor. He was complaining about how strict the town had become, how children were growing up too soft. Maya listened quietly, remembering how harsh his words had once made her feel. But this time, she didn't shrink away. She felt a quiet strength inside her, a sense of calm that came from knowing she had learned to protect herself, to face her fears, and to act with courage. She realized that she didn't need his approval to be strong. Her confidence came from within, nurtured by the lessons of the silent cowboy and her own growing understanding of the world. One afternoon, Maya visited the town library, a small building with tall windows and dusty shelves. She had discovered that reading books could open new worlds, teach new lessons, and strengthen her mind just as much as her heart. She found a quiet corner and began reading stories of courage, resilience, and kindness. Each page reminded her of what she had learned and what she still wanted to achieve. As she read, she noticed the cowboy entering the library. He moved quietly, almost blending with the shadows, and found a place to sit where he could watch without intruding. Maya didn't look up at him. She didn't need to. His presence was enough a reminder that she could be brave, that she could act, and that she could continue growing into the person she wanted to become. Days turned into weeks and Maya faced new challenges, both small and large. She helped a neighbor carry water, comforted a frightened child, and even spoke up during a town meeting about a problem in the school playground. Each time she remembered the lesson she had learned from the silent cowboy: calm presence, patience, courage, and kindness. She realized that strength wasn't about being loud or dominant. It was about acting with intention and care, helping others, and standing up for what was right. One evening after a particularly long day, Maya returned to her hill to reflect. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the fields. She thought about everything that had happened: the boy she had saved, the challenges she had faced, and the courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that she was no longer the same girl who had whispered, "Don't hit me, I'm already hurt." She had grown, changed, and learned to face the world with quiet strength. The silent cowboy appeared at the edge of the hill, as he always did. Maya smiled softly, holding the smooth stone he had given her. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to ask questions. The lessons he had taught her, the courage he had inspired, and the quiet guidance he had offered were more than words could ever express. She felt gratitude, respect, and a deep understanding of the power of presence and action. As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Maya felt a sense of peace. She had faced a real test of bravery, acted with courage, and protected someone who could not protect themselves. She had learned that true strength comes not from aggression or loudness but from patience, calm, kindness, and the courage to stand up for what is right. And she knew that whatever challenges the future held, she had the tools to face them. The silent cowboy gave a small nod as if acknowledging the journey she had taken. Maya understood. He had guided her without words, protected her without force, and taught her lessons that would stay with her forever. And now, she was ready for the next stage of her life. Stronger, braver, and ready to continue growing into the person she was meant to be. Maya had changed in ways she never thought possible. She walked through the streets of her small town with a calm confidence, her head held high, her steps steady. She had faced fear, learned courage, helped others, and discovered the quiet strength within herself. But more than that, she had learned about trust, hope, and the power of silent guidance, lessons she owed to the silent cowboy who had appeared in her life at the right time. One morning, Maya awoke to the sound of birds singing outside her window. The sunlight streamed through the curtains, and for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of calm excitement about the day ahead. She dressed quickly, brushed her hair, and took a deep breath. Today felt different. It was not a day of fear or challenge, but a day of reflection and growth. She knew that her life had been shaped by struggles, but also by kindness, guidance, and the choices she had made along the way. As she walked to school, Maya noticed small details she had never paid attention to before. The flowers in the garden seemed brighter, the streets less dusty, and the smiles of neighbors more genuine. She realized that life could be beautiful if she chose to see it that way. Her perspective had shifted. She no longer felt powerless or invisible. She felt capable, connected, and ready to take responsibility for her own life. School that day was different as well. Maya no longer hid in the back of the classroom. She raised her hand with confidence, shared her ideas during discussions, and even helped a new student who seemed nervous and shy. The new student reminded Maya of herself not long ago. Small, unsure, and in need of a guiding presence, Maya approached gently, offering a smile and a few kind words. "It's okay to feel nervous," she said. "You'll be fine. Let me help you find your seat." The student looked at her with relief and gratitude, and Maya felt a warm sense of accomplishment. She realized that her journey wasn't just about her own growth. It was also about helping others, sharing what she had learned, and becoming a quiet source of strength for those who needed it. After school, Maya returned to her secret hill, the place that had been her sanctuary and her bridge to understanding the silent cowboy's lessons. She held the smooth stone he had given her, feeling its weight in her hand. The stone had become a symbol of everything she had learned: patience, courage, kindness, and quiet strength. She remembered the moment he had given it to her, and a smile spread across her face. The memories of fear, sadness, and loneliness seemed distant now, replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. The cowboy appeared at the edge of the hill, as he always did, his presence calm and reassuring. Maya didn't speak. She didn't need to. He had taught her more than words ever could. She understood now that his role in her life had not been to solve her problems, but to guide her, inspire her, and help her discover her own strength. She had learned to stand up, to act with courage, and to protect not only herself but also others. Over the following weeks, Maya continued to grow. She helped her neighbors, participated in school activities, and even organized small events to help the younger children in the town. She became a quiet leader, someone others looked up to, not because she demanded respect, but because she earned it through her actions. People began to notice the change in her, the confidence, the kindness, the courage. She had become someone who could make a difference without seeking attention or praise. One afternoon, Maya visited the small library, a place she had come to love. Books had always been her window to other worlds, but now they were also tools for learning and reflection. She found a quiet corner and began reading stories about people who had faced challenges, overcome fear, and made a difference in their communities. Each story reminded her of her own journey, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered within herself. The silent cowboy appeared in the library as well, moving quietly between the shelves. Maya didn't need to look at him to feel his presence. She knew he was there, watching, guiding, and supporting her in his quiet way. She understood that his role in her life had always been subtle, a reminder that strength, courage, and kindness could exist without loud words or dramatic gestures. That evening, Maya returned to her hill one last time with the cowboy. The sky was painted with deep oranges and purples, the first stars beginning to twinkle. She held the stone tightly in her hand, feeling its smooth surface and the weight of the lessons it symbolized. "Thank you," she whispered softly, looking at the cowboy. He didn't respond with words, but his eyes held a warmth and understanding that spoke louder than anything he could say. He had watched her grow, guided her quietly, and given her the tools she needed to face the world with courage and kindness. And now she was ready to move forward on her own. Maya understood that life would continue to bring challenges. There would be moments of fear, sadness, and uncertainty. But she no longer felt helpless or alone. She had discovered the strength to face difficulties, the courage to stand up for herself and others, and the wisdom to act with patience and kindness. She had learned that true power came from quiet presence, steady guidance, and the willingness to help others without expecting anything in return. The cowboy gave a small nod, acknowledging that their journey together had reached its natural conclusion. Maya felt a mixture of gratitude, respect, and a little sadness. She would miss his presence, but she understood that she no longer needed him by her side to feel safe or strong. She had become her own source of courage, her own guardian, and her own guide. As she walked down the hill toward her home, Maya felt a new sense of freedom and possibility. The town seemed brighter, the streets more welcoming, and the people more connected. She knew that she could continue to make a difference, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of courage, kindness, and patience. She could be the person she had always dreamed of becoming, someone who inspired others quietly and effectively, just as the silent cowboy had inspired her. That night, Maya placed the smooth stone on her windowsill, a reminder of the journey she had taken, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered. She lay in bed, feeling calm, grateful, and hopeful. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she now had the tools, the courage, and the wisdom to face them. In the days that followed, Maya continued to grow. She helped the younger children at school, encouraged friends to be brave, and acted with quiet confidence in every situation. She faced difficult moments with patience and calm, remembering the lessons of the silent cowboy, and she found joy in the small victories, a smile from a friend, a problem solved, or a kind word shared. The town began to recognize Maya's growth, though few knew the story behind it. They noticed her confidence, her kindness, and her willingness to help others. They saw a young girl who had faced fear, embraced courage, and discovered her own strength. Maya had become a living example of resilience, patience, and quiet leadership, showing that true power comes from within and is reflected in actions, not words. The silent cowboy appeared one final time on the hill, just as the sun was rising. Maya saw him standing there, calm and quiet as ever, and she smiled. She understood that he had been a guide, a teacher, and a source of inspiration. He had helped her discover her own strength, courage, and wisdom. And now, she was ready to face the world on her own. Maya walked toward him, holding the smooth stone in her hand. She nodded, a silent thank you for everything he had taught her. He nodded back, understanding that their time together had ended. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the horizon, leaving Maya with the knowledge that she had the courage, wisdom, and strength to continue growing, helping others, and living her life fully. As she watched him disappear, Maya felt a deep sense of peace. She had transformed from a quiet, fearful girl into a confident, courageous young person. She had faced her fears, helped others, and discovered the power of quiet strength, patience, and kindness. And she knew that the lessons she had learned would stay with her forever, guiding her through every challenge and every triumph. Maya returned home that morning with a light heart. She knew that life would continue to test her, but she now faced it with confidence, hope, and a deep understanding of her own strength. The silent cowboy had changed her life, not with grand gestures or loud words, but with quiet guidance, patient presence, and unwavering support. And for that, she would always be grateful. From that day forward, Maya carried the lessons of the silent cowboy in her heart. She continued to grow, to help others, and to face life with courage and kindness. And although he was no longer by her side, his influence remained, a quiet force shaping the person she had become and the life she was determined to live. Maya had finally understood the meaning of strength. It was not about power, fear, or control. It was about courage, patience, kindness, and the ability to stand for what is right, even in the face of fear. And with that understanding, she was ready to embrace the future, knowing that she could face whatever came her way with confidence, compassion, and quiet strength.